Okay. Hello and welcome to today's webinar, Understand Your Deal-Making Process with Affinity Analytics and Team Reports. I'm Michelle Daly, Head of Demand at Affinity. Before I head you over to our moderator, a couple of housekeeping notes. We will be recording today's webinar and we will share that with everyone after the event. If you have any questions during the webinar, you can enter them at any time in the question box or submit them via email to webinars@affinity.co and we'll get those answered for you after the event. Now over to you, Ranesh.
Thanks, Michelle, and welcome everyone. We're happy to have you here. Today, Megan, Zahao, and myself are coming together to discuss an essential part of data work for deal-making teams using Affinity Analytics, dashboards. Dashboards are a powerful mechanism to enable what we hear our customers tell us time and time again. We need to make data-driven decisions. It seems like everyone at this point is aware that they should be investing in and making data-driven decisions. Megan, what are some of the difficulties that people run into when trying to incorporate and use data in their workflows?
Yeah, great question, Ranesh. So look, there's a few things that we hear time and time again from our customers and investment professionals in particular. The first is where they're sourcing that data from. The second piece is where they're pulling that data into, and then how they're setting it up in a way that it's going to deliver them not just insights, but actionable insights here. And then lastly, the biggest problem is ensuring that measurement is set up across their entire workflow, across their entire deal flow, so that you can have a single source of truth. And so that means tapping into each stage from fundraising to portfolio management to get a real understanding of performance.
That's really helpful, Megan. Thank you. Zahao, we launched Affinity Analytics earlier this year to help deal makers transform their CRM into the place where they make their future business decisions. Can you tell us a little bit about how Affinity Analytics and specifically why a business intelligence tool within a CRM is so useful?
Yeah, as we were talking about earlier, we know that making decisions using data is a really critical workflow for our primary users, deal makers. And especially in the current business environment we're in, so many of these industries are pointing to higher velocity in deal making. In venture capital, for example, where a lot of our customers work, the time between meeting a founder to closing a round is just getting shorter and shorter because there's just so much liquidity and competition. And so this means that our users need to uncover insights from their data faster. And just as importantly, they need to be confident in the decisions they're making based on those insights. And so our CRM is already really powerful, and it's a single source of truth for all that data that our users care about. And it does this by automatically syncing with your email and calendar data, providing automatically enriched data on persons and organizations from multiple data sources. And also it allows any sort of manual data points that we want to track to be added as well. And so we have customers who are tracking things like diversity and inclusion, or even ESG data points to help with their deal-making process. With Affinity Analytics, that now gets enhanced. That data can now be transformed in a visual manner to meet the needs of any deal team. And so we started off by focusing on questions that you wanted to answer around deal sourcing, deal management, and funnel conversion. And now I'm especially excited because we have this new team activity report, which I'll be showcasing a little bit later. This makes a new set of data points available within Affinity Analytics, which will allow users to understand the amount of email and calendar interactions they've had with external parties. And so together, this will enable our users to make better business decisions more quickly and confidently.
Thanks, Zahao. All right, everyone. So today, Megan and Zahao are going to show us a few of the top reports we see across our customers in the private capital markets. These are reports that are helping our customers better understand their pipeline today and become more efficient in their work. But before we get into that, I do want to remind the audience that Affinity Analytics comes with 3 categories of reporting: list summary, funnel analysis, and as Zahao mentioned, the brand new team activity report. Each category contains a set of data points which enable you to produce easy to read and shareable dashboards, helping you measure your performance. But what we want to get into today is about leveraging that ability to create your own dashboards with Affinity Analytics. Remember that you can add your own customized dashboards in 2 different ways. Number 1, all of our enhanced support plans offer the assistance of our wonderful CSMs who'll be happy to partner with you to produce the dashboards you need. Or if you want, you and your team are also able to create your own reports and dashboards right from the Affinity Analytics section. So Megan, with that, you're going to kick us off with a very comprehensive dashboard. Before you get into it, do you mind giving us a quick overview of what you'll be taking us through?
course. So what I'm going to show is not your typical dashboard. What it is a collection of the top reports that we've seen across our customers in the private capital space. So it's going to answer some of the most common questions sort of in buckets of stage of your workflow. And all of these reports can help you tie together your process, again, from sourcing to portfolio maintenance. So let me jump into it. All right. Okay, is everyone seeing my screen?
Yep.
Perfect. Okay, so Ranesh, what you mentioned before that these top dashboards, what sets them apart is that they provide actionable insights for private investors, most common questions and workflows. So Affinity Analytics is going to give you a view into these workflows to help you optimize and organize them and make them more efficient. So let's start with sourcing. So this is one of the most common workflows we see in Affinity. Through Affinity Analytics, you can get insights on the pace and seasonality of your sourcing efforts. So on the left-hand side here, we have deals added by month. This can help you figure out, are you sourcing enough deals? We can start to dig into, for example, why we have no deals in May. And then we can also align on what time of year we should be sourcing. So for example, in this next chart, deals added by quarter, we can get a comparison across the years we've been a team and start to see if there are seasonal trends we should look into or double down on. In this case, Q4, maybe not our best sourcing month, but last year seemed to be an anomaly. We can look into that data. We can also look into and see who on the team was the best sourcer. So this past year, Steve and myself hold the top spots, and maybe I can go to Steve and ask and figure out, what he's doing differently that might help the rest of the team. One potential solution or answer there could be who he knows. So in the chart on the right, top 10 sources of introduction, this uses one of Affinity's proprietary columns, source of introduction, to show where we might be getting those deals from. In this case, Giovanni Waters, a very valuable relationship for us, and we want to make sure we're taking care of that relationship.
That's great, Megan. And so our customers can use standard columns, like you had mentioned, source of introduction, but peeking ahead to the rest of the report you've got coming up, they can also use custom data points, yes? How customizable are these insights?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I'll talk about that a little bit further down here. So you can really start customizing your insights with the custom data points that you have that you're tracking. So for example, this next section, diversity and inclusion metrics, is a really good example of the ability to use both Affinity columns as well as your custom data points. Of course, this is an emerging trend we're seeing in the private capital space. And many of, more of our customers in the private capital space are making diversity and inclusion metrics a priority. And Affinity Analytics can help you ensure you're hitting your goals and also identify maybe where you're falling short. So as a first example, if you're sourcing from underrepresented countries, you'll be able to create a heat map of your sourcing. So in the chart on the left here, we can see that heat map. Again, we're mostly sourcing from the US, so maybe there's some work to do. And in the chart on the right, we can break that down by year to see if we've made any progress year over year. I would say that, so if we scroll back up, we've made a little bit of progress in diversification over this year, but maybe we still have quite a bit of work to do. Now, as a next example, founder gender. So this is, if you're tracking this manually in Affinity, if this is something that is important to your firm, you can see the makeup of your sourced companies and look at these statistics over time as well. So here we can see that we've increased the presence of female founded companies slightly, but again, we still have a little bit of work to do there as well. And certainly when the overall percentage is 15%, we can look at that and sort of measure that over time. So Ranesh, this is really only scratching the surface of what we can do in this realm. And then Zahao will also get into this in a bit more depth in his section.
Thanks, Megan. Before we get into the next section of reporting, I did want to highlight the 3 next sections that you've got coming up: top of funnel experience, funnel analysis, portfolio support. Collectively, these tiles, these reports in each of these sections are all quickly gaining in importance in today's environment. The proliferation of capital, speedier deals, increased competition. I know it's really important that experience your firm provides for founder teams is a positive one. Can you comment on that a little bit as you go through those 3 reports, please?
Absolutely. And look, you're totally right. This information has always been important, but it's critical as private investors have had to differentiate and stand out for founding teams who now have more choice for funding than ever. So let's start with what I'm calling top of funnel experience here. So in this section here, let's start with the top left. So for example, are we introducing ourselves to teams within our set time frame? So in the companies and introduction stage with no communication, we're looking at all of those companies at our top of funnel level where we haven't reached out to them at all. This is a great way for management to identify an interesting company that might be falling through the cracks. So for example, CrowdVision, why haven't we talked to them yet? Now, on the right-hand side, in companies in the meeting stage with no meetings book, we go that next layer down. So once we've vetted at the top of funnel, we've already been introduced, why haven't we booked a meeting with them? Again, this is a great way to have the leadership be able to take a quick look and see where we might be missing out on a great deal. Now, we can use the same type of communications data, that data exhaust that you have via that email and calendar sync with Affinity, to see if we're keeping up a good cadence with these companies so that we can stay top of mind for the founding teams. So in the active leads with 15 or fewer emails chart, we are flagging any active leads, so further than the introduction stage, where maybe we haven't been doing enough communication. We probably want to be keeping them abreast of what we're doing, especially if they're in due diligence or term sheet, and it looks like we may not be up to the standard that we want to present to our founding teams. And then finally, we can calculate how long we've had a company and sitting in a particular status and make sure that we're moving companies through the funnel. So in this case, we're looking again at those deals in the introduction stage who've been there for longer than 10 days. So we want to make sure that if we think it's an interesting company, that we're moving it through, or we're going ahead and rejecting that company. In this case, we've got a long list of companies that we probably should follow up on. Now, Ranesh, you also mentioned funnel. So as we get into that topic, a couple of very interesting charts here. So again, with deal flow moving faster than ever, it's really important to know where you can optimize your process and where you're losing valuable time. So with Affinity Analytics, you can easily answer some of these questions, like at what stage in our funnel are deals slowing down? So average days in each status is going to help you identify where you could be making your process more efficient. In this case, maybe due diligence, we need to buckle down and become more efficient there. And then in the last status before passed or lost, we can see where deals are falling off. Are we actually vetting companies at the top of the funnel like we should, and then down funnel really only focusing on the companies that are the best fit? In this case, it looks like we are, but what we don't want is to spend time with companies that aren't a good fit down funnel in due diligence and spending more time and resources on those. So this is a great chart to have to make sure that your process is efficient. Now, lastly, in portfolio support. So here we have reached the stage where we're already closed. These are companies that we're working with. We've closed them. They're part of our portfolio, So a couple of things here we can do is, let's say some of our best customers are tracking the portfolios in Affinity and tracking the projects that they're doing with their portfolio companies. So one of the reasons to do that are these charts right here. On the left-hand side, we can see what our portfolio companies are requesting. Are they requesting recruiting support? Are they requesting introductions on the business development side? So we can accurately see where we're spending our time and resources and either invest more resources in those areas or make sure to strengthen our brand and make sure that our portfolio companies and potential founders know that we are great at recruiting and have successfully helped our portfolio companies with that area. On the right-hand side, number of projects by Portco. Now, this is really meant to make sure that your time and energy is aligned to your top portfolio companies. In this case, we've done 6 projects with Stripe. Let's hope that they are one of our top portfolio companies. Otherwise, there is a discrepancy between the amount of time and resources we're spending there. So finally, and then I will give up my time here, fundraising. So speaking of Affinity being an end-to-end platform, many of our best customers are also using Affinity to track and manage fundraising and investor relations. So Affinity Analytics is critical to this workflow. And as you can see in this example, we've got Fund 4 probability adjusted investment. So we can see in real time how those most recent fundraising efforts have been going and estimate the fund size with that probability adjusted pipeline. You can also then roll this up into see the AUM or probability adjusted AUM of the firm overall, and then take this insight to do additional analysis on dry powder and capital deployed. So these are just some of the top types of insights that we see related to pipeline and workflow efficiency within the private capital space. But with the recent release of team activity, Affinity Analytics is also well positioned to track internal benchmarks and KPIs. So I'm going to hand it back to Ranesh and Zahao to help share some of those insights on how team activity is going to help you drill deeper into your analysis using interaction data.
Thank you, Megan. That was really great. Before we get started, Zahao, let's talk about team activity and the interaction data that it encompasses. Can you set the stage for us on what interaction data is and why it's an important layer for analysis?
Sure. Thanks, Ranesh. At Affinity, we think about interaction data as the number of emails and meetings that have taken place between your team members on Affinity and any external people and organizations. Our thesis is that this data set is the best approximation of your real-world relationship building. So the people that you're interacting with most frequently are typically the people that you are either someone you already have a strong relationship with or who you are trying to actively build a relationship with. Essentially, this data that we're automatically syncing into the Affinity CRM is now all of a sudden available within Affinity Analytics. And so this is a really powerful step up because not only are you able to create the types of reports that Megan just shared with us, you can also look at things from an entirely different dimension. So for example, you could drill down to see how external relationships, like the ones you want with founders, portfolio companies, LPs, and external stakeholders are being managed. And also you could view how often your internal team or team members are engaging with external parties. And so I'm going to show a few examples of that. And one thing to call is that a lot of times we see that these questions around team activity come up in the context of these internal benchmarks and KPIs that you want to track, oftentimes at the individual level for specific teammates. And so let's take a look at how you might use this data within a team performance dashboard. I'm going to share my screen here. Cool. Hopefully everyone can see this.
Yep.
Cool. So in this dashboard, we have a lot of the same types of questions and overall metrics that Megan shared, but we're really looking at it from the perspective of your team and how you want to think about managing that team. And so at the top here, we have a deal management and sourcing section. And so we're looking at things like, how many deals are our teammates owning at one time? I can very easily see what the average is across the entire team. And there are definitely some outliers, both on the high end and the low end. And so it might be worth going in and asking some questions around, why that is. maybe Steve has a lot of deals that actually are already, passed on, or other actions have been taken, but he hasn't done a good job of updating his data in the CRM. Alternatively, maybe there are some new folks who have just joined and are just getting up to speed on things. But having this data available allows you to really quickly identify where are the outliers to ask some of these types of questions. Similarly, you might want to look at this from an entirely different perspective. A lot of our customers are tracking their deals based off a priority level, and they want to have certain individuals working on certain types of priority level deals. And so you'll see here that Megan and Jovian own some of the highest proportion of high priority deals. And so it might be good to understand if that is intended, or maybe if they're not necessarily spending in time where they should be. Whereas on the other end of the spectrum here, you'll see there are some folks who are only working on lower priority deals, and that might be the case. But again, it's a question that you can start to think about answering. And here's just another way on the right-hand side of looking at that same question, but in a different manner. Down here in the second row, we have some of those examples of D&I priorities that some of our customers are really trying to focus on in the recent terms. And so this is another way of looking at based on specific individual teammates as well. Through our CRM data and within Affinity Analytics, you can provide breakdowns like this to understand what proportion of the deals a specific person has sourced fits this particular criteria that you have. And so on the right-hand side here, you'll see that there's quite a few folks who haven't sourced any deals from non-male founders. And so that's something that's worth digging into and understanding why that is. And maybe this means there's a change in the company's priorities as far as how they approach sourcing for the rest of the year. And in the same way here, you can see that same question asked as it relates to the ethnicity of founders. And again, having that average chart that you can pull up really easily starts to let you see where are the outliers within your specific team. Going down a bit to funnel analysis and thinking about that question of how effective are you at converting through deals? Not only can you look at that at the team level, like Megan shared, you can also look at it from the perspective of specific individual teammates as well. And so on the far left here, I have some basic metrics around who's been winning the most deals over the course of the year. But not only are we looking at pure count, you can look at things like what's their effectiveness at converting from the very top of the funnel through to winning a deal. And so again, you can see there are some clear outliers here as far as performance across the team, but you also get a sense of overall for the team, how things are going for the year. And 35% looks pretty good, but you can see that performance is pretty dispersed across the different teammates. And similarly, that question of, how long does it take for you to get a particular deal closed? Here, I'm showing how long it takes to get from a deal added at the very top of the funnel through to pushing through to the finish line here, one way or the other. And so again, at a team level, you can break this down to individual teammates. And Kathleen, it might be worth asking her why her deals are taking longer, several orders magnitude longer than some of the other folks, as well as the average deal length on this particular list. And so there's some interesting questions that come out of just looking at this data here. Moving on a little bit further, we have the new team activity data that I was talking about. And so one angle through which you might look at this data is just from the perspective of external relationship building. And so this could be for a LP list that you're tracking. In this case, it's for a specific deal list, but you can kind of see who are the organizations that you've been building the most touch points and sort of relationship building exercises with. You might ask yourself, is this what we were actually intending to do for the year? Are these the right companies that we're trying to actively engage with? Or are there other ones who we should be talking to, but we don't necessarily see here for what particular reason? On the right-hand side here, you might also use this to drive future business decisions. So on this list here, you'll see that there's quite a few folks on our high priority list that we haven't talked at all in 2021. These are folks who we regularly engaged in 2020, but for whatever reason, we've just missed the ball as far as staying in touch with these folks. And so we can see that there's some specific opportunities associated with these companies. And so it might make sense for some of the deal leads to follow up and to engage with these external partners. Scrolling down a bit here, you can see that same set of data being looked at in an entirely different way from the perspective of internal teammates. And so over here, you'll see that across the board in 2021, most of the team has been fairly active and pretty consistent as far as how often they've been engaging with external parties. But there are, again, a few outliers here. This might be because they're not actually active deal members, but there's different ways you can kind of look at this data to understand whether or not it meets your expectations. And similar here, something worth calling out is that with Affinity Analytics, you can start to do additional types of analysis on top of the data points that you've provided within the CRM. And so here, what I'm looking at is the average number of emails that are sent to a specific organization by each deal lead. And so this is kind of interesting because you'll see that Bruno has a lot more engagement and a lot more email communications with a specific organization as part of his deal making process. Whereas, Matt and Kathleen are a lot less frequently outreaching and engaging with them. I might want to compare this against some of that funnel analysis data from earlier and to look at their win rates to understand if, higher touch points equates to, more deals being won. And so those are some of the connections you can start to make when you have this new dimension of data available for you. Lastly, I think one other thing just to kind of tie it all up is going back to that DNI data, even, as long as you're tracking that within the CRM, you can start to do other types of analysis through that team activity lens as well. And so for both of these two charts here, what I'm looking at is the average number of emails and meetings that I'm giving for each deal based on the gender or the race of the founders of the company. And so even if further up, you might not be doing a great job of sourcing deals, or you might not be doing a great job of converting deals to your funnel for some of these DNI metrics that you're trying to hit, you might still be able to hang your hat on something like what we're seeing here, which is the fact that for the deals that come through from female founders, it does look like, we're providing just the right amount of interactions similar amounts of interactions, to male founders. And in many cases, we're actually, sending more emails and meeting just as frequently with female founders as we do male founders, which is great to see. Whereas if you look at it from a different angle here on the race side of things, you might notice that actually, we're actually sending less emails and meetings and setting up less meetings with non-white founders versus white founders. And so, this is another way to look at the data and to understand if your team is performing the way that you expect it to, as far as these broader strategic initiatives. Okay. I think that's it. So those are just a few of the ways in which we can use the new team activity update to give you a more comprehensive view of the data set to develop these dashboards. Also give you reports to help your team make more informed and quicker business decisions. And I guess one thing to remember is that if you do need expert inspiration or you need some assistance in setting up some of these new dashboards, you can purchase an enhanced support package and work with the customer success manager to develop these reports and dashboards tailored to your firm's needs. Ranesh, I guess I'll hand that over to you.
Thanks, Ahad. That was awesome, and that's also a good reminder to all the viewers. Folks, remember, it's not just assistance with setting up dashboards or reports that you get with enhanced supports. You also get customized support and training from a dedicated CSM. You get onboarding and ongoing training on the Affinity platform, making sure you're on top of all the new things we add to the experience, but also ensuring that you get the most out of it. If you have any customized reporting needs, also one thing to remember is enhanced supports gets you an expert on deck to build your first dashboard, but also train your team on using the analytics platform and to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you, Megan. Thank you, Zaha, for this. I love that we've been able to see the entire progression from a robust, all-encompassing view of everything from sourcing, funnel analysis, and portfolio management, all the way down to how users can transform their analysis with interaction data. I do have a couple of questions before we close this out. Megan, I'm going to start with you. This is all very helpful, but I'm wondering, I imagine all of this can be really overwhelming. Where do you think is the best place to start when you build out a dashboard?
Yeah, that's a really great question, Ranesh. So there's a couple of ways to think about that. So, I would say sit down, understand your needs first, write out a list of the reports that you have, or if you're already doing it in Excel, pull those up. And if you're going with that enhanced support package, again, that's really that insurance policy so that you can set up and be ready to go. Hand that over to the CSM team here at Affinity. You can really do that in a tailored way for you. But if you're going to take this on yourself, I would say start with those templates. We have templates that are really meant for the core workflows that we see in Affinity. With these, they'll give you answers across a pretty significant portion of the deal pipeline and enable you to get more granular right away with your team. Then from there, I would say, look at those custom fields that are most important to you, see what questions are still lingering, compare those old reports or your wish list to what you have. And then either, again, reach out to your customer success manager or the support team, and we can work alongside you to pull together those reports and the dashboard specific to your needs.
Awesome, Megan. Thank you. So start with the templated dashboards, get an idea of the questions that are still lingering before deciding on the custom dashboards that you can build out. That's really helpful. All right, final question of the session. This one's for you, Zahao. I'm pretty sure everyone that's on this call has had a stakeholder or a client or a past prospect in mind when they're looking at data. It's never really just for yourself. What are some of the ways you can set up your dashboards and reports in Affinity Analytics to keep your team aligned and informed on the data being presented?
That's a really good question. And I think one of the overarching goals we had when we built Affinity Analytics was to figure out ways to help you share how your team is doing, both internally and externally as well. And so I think the first thing to call is that the way in which we built Affinity Analytics makes it such that these dashboards exist on a list as a view, similar to any other view you have for sheets or for Kanban board views. And so what that means is that you have this link that you can really easily share with anyone else who's already on Affinity. On top of that, you get all the other benefits of saved views on a list as well. For example, you can enforce privacy based off of who has access to that list, or you can even make that saved view private to yourself or public to anyone who has access to the list. And so there's different layers of privacy settings there that already get carried through. But then on top of that, I think like what that lets you do is you can start by just creating a private dashboard for yourself, make tweaks to it, work with your CSM to, perfect how you want to look, maybe even use the templates that Megan suggested to start building that dashboard. And then you can start socializing it with other folks on the team. And over time, once it's made into a state where it looks good and you feel like it's ready to share with the broader or more executive audience, you can start to make that more public and share it out as well. And not only is it available to people who are on Affinity, the really awesome thing with Affinity Analytics is that you can actually export your awesome visual dashboards as a PDF. And so then that opens up the door to you sharing it in a variety of different channels, whatever makes sense for your team. I think the really exciting thing on top of that is you can schedule this to be sent on a regular cadence by email. And so these dashboards that you have, you could schedule to fit whatever sort of purpose that you have in mind for it. And so we've seen teams set up summary pipeline reports that get sent before weekly Monday morning meetings. So people have a chance to review how things are performing and to come into the meeting with questions prepared ahead of time. And that's a really great way to get people just aligned on overall progress without using up valuable face time when everyone's on a call together. I think the other, and maybe the last point I'll end on is that not only can you schedule these dashboards to be sent on a regular cadence, you can schedule it to be sent to emails that are external to your Affinity instance. And so that opens up the door again in a whole wide range of ways. And so maybe just one way to call it out is we have teams that have these summary level, annual reports that they build for external LPs and other stakeholders who really want to get some insight into their progress over the course of the year. And so you can schedule these dashboards to be sent on a quarterly or annual basis to LPs, executives, other important stakeholders. And that can be used as a great way to build your brand, just share information. And we've seen a lot of customers already finding success going down that avenue.
Thanks, Aha. That was great. Awesome. So thank you for this, Megan, and thank you for this, Aha. Honestly, this was really, really informative to everyone watching. We hope you had an idea of how powerful the Affinity Analytics platform really is, especially with the new capabilities unleashed by Team Activity. We learned that Team Activity and Affinity Analytics now enables you to establish KPIs using real-time data, understand the nuances of your team's prospecting and relationship management, measure the efficiency of your deal sourcing, monitor your deal flow through easy to understand visualizations, and also manage your high-level connections, whether that's an LP or a very important founder on your team, on your portfolio. So if you're new to Affinity or would like to learn a little bit more, I strongly encourage you to reach out to get a demo, www.affinity.co/demo. Our team will be happy to walk you through our CRM, but also specifically the Affinity Premium or Enterprise plan that gives you access to Affinity Analytics right out of the box. If you're a current customer, reach out to our CSMs. They'll be happy to make sure you get the most out of Affinity Analytics. And remember to ask about the enhanced support plan. Lastly, Affinity Analytics does allow you to get really creative, and we've created a new top dashboards package, and that's on the way, so look out for that. We cover some of the dashboards that we didn't get a chance to cover today. Super helpful. And with that, I'm going to pass it back to you, Michelle.
Great. Thank you, Ranesh. Thank you so much, Megan and Zahal. It was a really great comprehensive overview. If anyone has any questions that they'd like the team to answer, you can send an email to webinars@affinity.co and we'll get those answered for you. And again, as Ranesh said, if you are ready to go a little bit deeper and learn more about how Affinity can help your organization, reach out to affinity.co/demo and set up a time that works for you. Thanks, everyone. And until next time, take care and be safe.